Now broadcasting from the Next Gen Conservative Studio in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report with Sam Whitfield.
Hey folks, welcome to the Thursday edition of the show. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, and joining us for the Thursday edition of my show is someone who has been a guest multiple times on the show, and we've kind of had an interesting past together. As you guys can no doubt tell from the title of this episode, Chuck Boris is my guest. And Chuck and I have a long history going back to the early days of Owen Benjamin's group before it became a cult. And there was a bunch of stuff that happened with that. And then Chuck and I kind of split for a lack of, a better term. And there was a lot of stuff that he went through kind of on his own. And a lot of people have asked me some questions about that time. And rather than try and, answer or, give answers as to what I thought would, happen with him, there's been a lot of misinformation. So I just figured I would bring him on to kind of tell his side of things and, regarding the Bears and regarding other things that happened. So anyway, I'm going to bring Chuck in here. And Chuck, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. How are you doing?
It's been better, to tell you the truth. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Sam.
No problem. So I guess it's been a long time, and I know that a lot of people do know kind of the history, but for those who are kind of, I guess, new to the podcast, or new to you, or just in general, I guess, how did you get started in YouTube, just in general, and I guess commentary or content creation, as it were?
Well, I guess I'll give a brief bio of myself. Born in 1985 in San Diego, California. Moved back and forth between New Jersey and California a few times in that years, at least once. But I remember some of my early life being in the home where I currently live, and I remember a lot from California. But came out to New Jersey for good when I was 3 years old. Lived here all my life. So let's fast forward a bunch. In the early days of YouTube, when YouTube first started, it was not the monster it is today. YouTube was a very small platform. It didn't have a lot of content on it, especially in way of people doing covers and everything else. I think one of the first videos I ever uploaded, which is still on my channel, if you look hard enough, is a cover that I did of the end theme to the Ren and Stimpy show, which is called Big House Blues. And I think that was the first video I ever made for YouTube, and it's still up, and I think it still has more views than a lot of my videos, but a lot of other covers of that song, even though it's crappy and that the camera sucked and the audio sucked. But that's kind of how I got started in it. Was always kind of a musician by nature, creative type. I went to a school for high school called Red Bank Regional. It was I was a boarder there. I had to be bussed out from my town to go there, which is very unusual. They only selected a few people from out of the regular school district to enter into this program. And basically it was a high school where you had a major like you would in college.
Oh, wow.
And mine was creative writing. So I've always kind of been artsy in that way. I used to draw a lot. So I was your typical dork, I guess you would say at the time. You know what I mean? Uh, uh, Now it's funny because like I was into anime when it really was not cool because I kind of still think anime isn't cool. Just
Right.
just to make that clear, but I did enjoy certain ones. But I don't like calling myself an anime fan because I don't think it's when you say anime fan, people think like a weeb, and that's not me.
Yeah, people either think weebs or they think, oh, that dude is into weird hentai tentacle porn.
Yeah, nothing like that.
Yeah.
I just liked to draw and all that kind of other stuff. But anyway, um, around 15, I started playing guitar. Still play guitar. Was in a couple bands, one semi-professional band that they were called the WAG. They were out of Middletown, New Jersey. And if I had to describe what their music was like, I would say that they were like kind of like Fleetwood Mac, kind of that pace of rock. Nothing too hard, a lot of softer stuff, but a lot of like middle ground rock songs. They had some decent stuff. They had some other stuff that I absolutely hated playing though, but I had to learn 3 hours of um acoustic material of acoustic covers to be in the band, plus an hour of their original music. Plus, when I joined, it was right before Christmas time, so I had to learn an additional hour of Christmas music.
Oh,
So
geez.
it was a lot of trouble, and basically the bassist in the band was married to the keyboardist. Their names were Brian and Alicia, and they're a married vegan couple. So,
Ooh.
um, and they're nice people to a certain extent, but basically I was never ever going to win a creative argument against a married vegan couple. So the guy who found me and recruited me for the band was the drummer Brian Mowry, and we became friends. We weren't making that much money doing these shows because they always said, "Oh, we're saving up for to record a new album." So I was
Yeah.
doing, spending money on gas and guitar strings and everything else. And, the drummer, Brian, knew the situation I was in. So he would like literally give me like $20 out of his own pocket. So I had like enough gas to get home and whatnot. And he was a good friend of mine, but a lot of my friends were having trouble coming out to some of our shows because we used to play all over New Jersey. So I decided, hey, I got the room here. I got the equipment. I'm going to set up a full band setup outside and invite all my friends. We're going to have a nice big barbecue and do our electric set. And we did that. Turned out very well. It was actually probably one of our
And
better electric shows. Yes.
and if I can kind of ask, this was all kind of this was all like pre this was I imagine that this was kind of like pre social media. Like the internet was a thing, but like social media hadn't really taken off.
Yes.
Yeah, I
We're
right.
talking about like the 2011, 2012 right now. So
Yeah,
yes, we are at the point where like good cameras started to be in cell phones, but not unless you're willing to fork over big
right.
bucks for a decent cell phone. Um, so kind of pre that day, we used to do a radio show, a fake radio show together that we used to call the Imaginary Radio Show, where we would tell stories from our lives and stuff, and that was all done on a portable MP3 recorder. So
Oh well.
this is like before even like people were using their cell phones for like all this kind of stuff. Is before cell phones dominated every market
So
available.
so you also kind of did similar to me. You did podcasting kind of before podcasting became a medium then.
A little bit. You can still find if you look up the Imaginary Radio Show, you can still find some of the episodes. If you're going to listen to one, I recommend you find the one. I'm going to have to find what it's called, but it should be fairly obvious from the title. It's the story of the drummer Brian. He had his uncle come on the show to tell the story about when he was born. And it's so funny because, his uncle's saying, when your sister came out, she was so beautiful. I had my friends were all coming by saying, what a beautiful baby. And then literally when you came out, everybody was like, what happened? What came out looked like a combination between a monkey and a donkey and hair everywhere. It was disgusting. It's a really funny story. So I recommend if anybody watch any episode of that, that'd be the one you look up. But anyway, he was my buddy and we did the show at my house. Went over fairly well, but started to rain right at the end. Everybody was grabbing equipment, bringing it in to get it out of the rain. And he had a massive heart attack and dropped dead on the porch of our house over here. So
oh shit, yeah, I know you've mentioned that you had a friend who passed in private, but I didn't know that was the one in particular.
Yeah, well, I've had a few friends pass in this time, but yeah, for a while that kind of soured me on doing music. The band wanted to continue, but without a drummer for a while. And I didn't want to do it. And then there was talk of, I was the replacement guitarist. I was not the original guitarist of the WAG. The original guitarist is a man named Dan Corboy. And before I had left the band, we had talked on the phone. And he had basically said all the reasons I was contemplating leaving the band and I was displeased with the band are the exact reasons why he left. He was never going to win a creative argument. He didn't like the direction they were taking the band in. So what ended up happening is they wanted to do a tribute show for Brian Mowry, the drummer. And they wanted to get the original guitarist back for that show, which I was absolutely fine with. But I said, well, if you're going to invite Dan back, I'm perfectly capable of playing your songs on drums. I'm not a great drummer, but I can play your songs on drums just fine. They didn't like that idea, and that kind of just soured me on the whole thing because it was kind of like my friend just died. Now you want me to like compete with the old guitarist who wrote these songs with you. And it's kind of an unfair position to put me in because I can't compete with that. It's not fair. And that's just it. If that's what it's going to be, then really the original core group should be the ones who do it. And they kind of resented me for that. I kind of resented them. We fell out and I left the band, and the rest is history. They don't want to have anything to do with me. Wait, I take that back. The bassist, he would not mind working with me again. It's the keyboardist, Alicia. She is the one who has said she has no desire to ever work with me ever again. So
interesting.
So anyway, this is all wrapping up to. So after this had happened is when I started to focus more heavily on content creation and doing acoustic covers and stuff like that on YouTube. So I started going heavy on that, and doing that, started getting involved in all of these conservative leaning or just straight up conservative commentators and people that had shows and stuff like that. That's what I was interested at the time as a 20-something-year-old, younger guy. Excuse me. So what had happened is, so I'm at the point now where like I still want to do music, but I'm just not sure in what capacity I would like to do music. And I was watching at the time I had gotten fairly into watching Steven Crowder, and you guys can cringe all you want. I'm not here to defend Steven Crowder. I'm just here to say that I used to watch his show fairly regularly.
Hey man, that makes two of us. I used to watch Crowder back when he was working for Andrew Breitbart. Not a lot of people know this, but before Crowder became kind of his own thing, he was literally like an 18-year-old, kid who was working, for Andrew Breitbart. He had actually starred, I'm sure on Arthur
Mm-hmm.
as the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at the time when Breitbart was a thing, I was well when Andrew was still alive, I was around 15, which was kind of when I started podcasting, and on Blog Talk Radio. So, and Blog Talk Radio, I don't know if you've ever heard any of the audio, but it was basically just like a glorified like phone conferencing system, and then people would live stream audio out to the internet, and it was, I mean, it was horrible audio quality, but because podcasting wasn't really a thing at that point yet, and so that's what everyone used, and so um, I used that for the first like 4 years of my show, and then Blog Talk Radio kind of outpriced themselves. They moved the prices and basically got rid of the free tier, so everyone moved to Spreaker, and then I was on Spreaker for a year where I met a couple of guys who were also high school conservatives. We kind of formed um, a conservative kind of, I guess, podcast network, and then basically kind of the same thing. One of the guys actually uh, got on Fox News one time because he busted his college professor for just blatant propaganda. He was one of the first ones to kind of do that, and at the time, from kind of the rest of us, he kind of got like a big head because of that, and the rest of us were kind of it went from being like a group effort to, it was kind of like, well, I'm the head honcho now, and you guys have to do what I say. So we kind of split off from him, and since then we've all kind of made up, and we're all on friendly terms again. But from so after I split from him, I made another group that I kind of founded, and it worked out good for a year, but basically it was just like I was just starting college at that point, and none of us really had like the financial resources to kind of um you know deal with anything. And then Charlie Kirk actually poached some of my buddies for Turning Point
Mm.
USA, and then ended up firing them later in an unrelated thing. Which so I was kind of on my own, and I think that's kind of where you and I met. So, and that's kind of where I discovered Crowder. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
with me, yeah, I was watching Crowder, and it was like November. I just looked it up, the date, so I think it was like November 9th, around there. It was of 2017. It was Steven Crowder's 1 millionth subscriber episode. And on that show, there was a gentleman. Well, I take that back. He is not a gentleman.
Well,
there was a man who I later found out was totally insane, named Owen Benjamin. Now, okay, so let me explain. It was the 1 millionth subscriber episode of Steven Crowder, and Owen was on there to do one of his shitty piano parodies. And what he did, it was a piano version of Sweet Child of Mine, but it absolutely sucked. And I'll tell you why, because who doesn't know the chorus of Sweet Child of Mine? Oh, whoa, whoa, sweet child of mine. Sorry about your ears, everybody. But Owens was, oh, whoa, whoa, 1 million subscribers, which is like, ew, it doesn't even like fit right, It doesn't rhyme, it doesn't fit right. Like, it was just kind of inappropriate. But literally what I thought in my head is, if this guy can get on Steven Crowder and do this absolute crap, there's no reason why
Right.
I shouldn't be able to market myself to these same people and do better. So that was and I've never hid that. I've hid that from the beginning.
No.
Literally, the reason I got involved with that group is because I was looking for an audience to market myself to.
Same here.
It had nothing to do with me liking Owen so much or liking Crowder so much, other than a casual interest. So if anybody that's, I'm sure, currently been in the Bears or left the Bears knows that they can, at first, they can be welcoming and make you feel part of a group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the time, it wasn't nearly as culty, because the way the Unbearables were described when I'd first heard about them after this episode was they were a group of people who would be willing to talk about any issue with you and not be an asshole about it. That was literally how they described themselves. As we know now, that's not what they are today. What they are today is a far cry from that. But that's why I take offense when people refer to people who were involved with Owen in my era of things as ex-cultists, because it was not that way when we were involved at all. It was a totally different animal. And the first inkling of something weird and fishy going on, we all got out of there.
Yeah, well,
so anyway,
I don't want to interject, but just to kind of fill people in on my side of things. So similarly, I had so around the time that you were watching Crowder, I was also watching Crowder, and I never saw the 1 million subscriber episode, but
YouTube took it down. It's still available on Facebook, though, if you go and look it up.
But as many people who are in my circle know, I had been a huge listener of Dennis Miller's radio show, to the point where, like, I used to call in regularly and for like the last year and a half of the show. And that's how I found out about Crowder, and someone in that group had mentioned Owen, and I had never really checked him out. Like, I kept hearing about Owen, and then I had been a listener of Joe Rogan, and yes, I know there are people who also, they think Rogan's a hack, they think he's a sellout, but I was listening to Rogan back in 2009 when.
Yeah, also, just to be clear to everybody watching, this discussion that Sam and I are having is not an endorsement of any streamer. It's just telling what happened to us.
Yeah.
We're not here to argue about how stupid Crowder is, or how stupid Owen is, or how stupid Rogan is, or how great any of them are. That's not the purpose of this discussion. So
yeah,
I guess we could leave that at that,
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. So, I had been listening to Rogan for, years at that point. And so, and I still listen to Rogan fairly regularly, but at that point I had, the thing with Rogan is you don't listen to every episode because they're 3 hours long. But when I saw that Owen came on, he was like that. He was like the episode that day. And so I remember I was still in college at the time, and I remember, like, on my podcast feed, an episode with Owen popped up, and I'm like, oh, I've heard of this guy. I'll check him out. So I did, and it was the episode where Rogan, I guess it was like his third appearance or whatever, and Rogan sat him down and was like, hey, dude, like, what's going on? Like, you can't be saying the N-word on Twitter all the time. Like, you have a horrible social media, thing. And so, and then Kurt Metzger came in that episode and basically, like, talked over Owen for 3 hours. So, like, my initial thing of Owen was kind of like, okay, well, this guy kind of seems like a lovable oaf, basically. Like,
and that's what he came across as. honestly, in the beginning, he did not try to pass himself off as some guru or some smart guy. His whole shtick was that he was a 7-foot tall idiot. You know what I mean?
So
That was his entire shtick.
yeah, so I mean, because Kurt Metzger talked over him the entire episode, I never really felt like I got a chance to, like, I guess, get to know him. So I kind of felt bad, and I tweeted out something. I didn't really tag anyone, but well, that's not true. I did at Owen, but that's because he was still on Twitter at the time, and I said, I just listened to this episode with at Owen Benjamin. Seems like a decent guy, but I'd like to learn more about him. And I can't remember who it was, but someone got in touch with me and invited me to a Facebook group, and then someone else, I think it might have actually been the man.
Wait, but before you say a name, if it's who I think it is, I don't know if he would appreciate us. I know it's been so long, he might not care anymore, but just in case, maybe we shouldn't mention our mutual friend who we probably met through.
Um.
A certain man from up north.
Oh no, it's not him.
Okay, I'm just saying, because
um.
I know he's enjoying his private life, and I don't want to be the one to bring his name back into things. So I just go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, let's just say that one of the gummy people. Let me just put it this way. Invited me into the Discord, and basically they had found out that I had interviewed Ben Shapiro when I was in high school, which by the way, I do want to clarify for people. The only reason I interviewed Ben Shapiro was because I had originally wanted to interview Andrew Breitbart, but when I was going to interview Andrew Breitbart, he had passed away. So the reason why I interviewed Ben was because I basically emailed him out of, he was still working for Breitbart at the time, and he had basically, agreed to come on, and he wasn't Ben Shapiro yet as we know him today.
Mm-hmm. He was a kid at that point, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we both were. I was like 17, and he was, I think, still in his mid-20s. Didn't even have kids. Yeah, but my point being is, so someone had told Owen about that, and Owen was like, "Oh man, we've got to get. I want to meet this, guy. Like I'm still new to this whole political thing," and so like it was interesting because Owen's inner circle kept wanting me to, like, get in there, but like for whatever reason, when I got into that Discord, I immediately melded with you guys and the group that became known as the Danger Zone later on.
Mm-hmm.
And my nickname, the whole thing with getting a bear nickname was always weird to me because I've always used my actual name with the podcast and everything.
Yep, me too. I never had one of those bear names. I was always Chuck Boris, or my YouTube at the time was called Locomotive Breath, named after my favorite Jethro Tull song.
But I mean, when I was on stream, when I like super chatted, Owen was like, "What's your bear name?" And like he really wanted me to have a bear name, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing this for self-promotional purposes, so podcast bear, and that way people would ask me, "Hey, what's your podcast?" And I would tell them, and so that was pretty much it. And then basically, I met you through, along with Neri and Johnny Arcade and all those guys, and everything else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I guess that's kind of a good segue into the next part of the tale for the both of us. So we had discovered this guy named Owen. In short order, we found out that this guy is obviously shady. Then basically what had happened is Owen Benjamin had an opening comedian named Eric Nimmer, a man who claimed he was a Marine. and he had 20-something confirmed kills. He had all these college degrees, yet he was only 29 years old. Plus, his teeth are all jacked up because he claims that he took a grenade to the face. So, something about this doesn't seem right. So anyway, kind of because of that and because of the backlash when Neary had gone and roasted Eric Nimmer on stream, there was
hold
Go ahead.
on. Before that, I do want to
There's
add
probably
in
a lot of stuff I'm forgetting. It's been years.
Well, yeah, keep in mind, how long has it been? Have we known each other for 5 years at this point? I mean, it's
probably since around
yeah.
2017-ish, around there, I would guess 2017, 2018.
So from my memory, the whole thing with Nimmer started out. So the thing that someone just reminded me of was that Nimmer had only been in the Bears for like a week as Owen's
Yes.
opener, and then I had joined like literally like 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
So
I was just pre-Nimmer.
yeah,
And
so
I resented Nimmer because I didn't know who he was. I didn't like his style, and all of a sudden it was like, if you don't love this guy, we've got a problem.
well,
Which immediately, I don't like anything like that. I don't like being told what to do like that.
yeah, well, two things kind of set me off initially. First thing was immediately I never really found him funny. Second, he was crowdfunding for like a special at that point. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that too.
And me being a podcaster and me trying to do my own show, I was like, well, people were immediately asking for donations on his behalf, and I was like, I'd love to help out, but I'm kind of running my own thing. What little money I have as a college student, I'm going to invest in my own thing. I hope you understand, but
now, because you're on the subject, before I forget, I just want to mention, okay, so what was going to happen is Eric Nimmer was crowdfunding to do his own comedy special. What had happened is all of Owen's group that would live stream, we were going to do a 24-hour live stream, and basically Eric Nimmer was going to guest hop each stream to try to crowdfund this. What had happened is after the cracks had started to form, the intention was for at least some of us who streamed, not everybody, some people were really into Nimmer and actually wanted to help him. But at this point, already the cracks were starting to form, and me, along with a few others, I can't remember exactly who, our plan was to get Eric Nimmer on the show and then do nothing but make fun of him the whole entire time.
Right.
So our intention was kind of to subvert what he was trying to do and make him look like an asshole. The big falling out happened before that, so that never ended up coming to fruition. But anybody would say, "Oh, you were going to do," because people said that you were going to do a live stream for Nimmer's benefit. Yep, you're right. It was billed as that, but that was not my intention at all.
Well,
and maybe some in the DZ can back me up that remember that. I know that I'm not involved with the DZ anymore, but
neither am I.
I'm done with I'm done with all that. I don't want to fight with anybody. You know what I mean? I wasted enough of my life getting upset over these people I met on the internet. So, I matured a lot since all this has happened, but once again, I don't want to fight with any of these people, but let's just stick to the story. And I'm not going to go out of my way to demonize any of those people because
sure,
in reality, they probably weren't too bad. They did some things that bothered me, and I'm sure I did a lot of things that bothered them. So what it came down to is we just weren't, our personalities weren't compatible. And I think that was one of the things is that I always wanted to be very independent, and that might have bothered them. I can't speak for them, but go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So two things happened with, so I remember during the whole I remember with that like 24-hour live stream, someone had asked me to host Nimmer on the Whitfield Report, and I said no, and I said for two reasons. One, I don't really find it funny. B, I do do some comedy, but at that point my show was mainly still political, and so I'm like, so I don't think my show is just the right venue for this guy. The other thing was, and this is a key point. At that point, a certain gentleman whose name shall remain anonymous had told me and told others that Eric Nimmer had harassed his girlfriend,
And
and had
that
and
for
had
me was the final straw.
and had sent me DMs too, proving that this was the case. So, at this point, like I wasn't saying anything, but like I had been in the community and people had, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like I've always tried to be a nice guy, and I think people know that, and so like for whatever reason, people started coming to me and saying, hey Sam, you've been in media for a while. Eric Nimmer's harassing, people. Do you know someone we could talk to about this, in regards to Owen? And I didn't know that, but I was kind of like, well, uh, I'll, I'll ask around. So I remember I talked to you about it, and then, yeah, I guess that's
And
where you and I.
for those who don't know, quick refresh, what had happened is Owen was the headliner of a comedy show. His opening comedian at the time, his regular opening comedian was Eric Nimmer, but on this particular show, which is what we're talking about, Eric Nimmer was as well. So somebody we mutually know, two people we mutually know who were, let's say they were very close friends with one another. One of them decided to go to this show. And I don't want to toss around the phrase sexual harassment because of the ambiguity of kind of like the term and what people will assume. So I think a better way to phrase it is Eric Nimmer was being very handsy with this girl and kind of hanging all over her and telling her how pretty she was. And she was not feeling comfortable. And she had told people right then in private, I don't like where this is going. He's making me feel weird. And in the meantime, while he was doing this, he was messaging the guy who was friendly with this girl, saying, I'm going to take your girl. I'm going to F her. You go and kill yourself, soy boy, stuff like that.
Yeah,
kill yourself and live stream it. So
you can say fuck. This is an uncensored podcast.
Yeah. Just, I'm trying to stay away from swearing too much because of my kids are getting to the age where they start to pick up
right.
So I'm just trying to break the habit. It's not that I'm scared to curse. I'm just trying not to.
I got you. I'm just letting you know that, there's no need to censor on my show. So
yeah, well,
I get it. I have younger siblings too, so when I'm around them, I have to watch my mouth.
My kids they're in the other house. They're asleep already. So it's not an issue. It's just me trying to break the habit.
I get it.
That's what had been going on. And that was the final straw for me, because let's also not forget that on top of his bogus claims, on top of the harassment of the girl and the harassment of the guy, he also was these desperate aging women who were part of the Unbearables absolutely loved Eric Nimmer because he was fit, I guess. I mean, he had abs, but I mean, he was still a 5 foot tall manlet with jacked up teeth. You know what I mean? But also, resent isn't the right word for Eric Nimmer, but I did not like the way that these, first of all, because like Owen's group described themselves as like traditional values, which we know now that they're not, but I'm just telling you the way that it was then. That's how they were trying to present themselves. So it's like, okay, well, obviously you guys aren't for traditional values. The married women in here are fawning over this dude who they never even met. And first of all, the dude is, you could say what you want. I think I'm a million times more handsome than Eric Nimmer could ever hope to be. Okay. So it's not about that. I didn't want the attention from these women. I believe me, I did not want their attention. I just resented the fact that a group that were calling themselves conservatives and standing up for traditional values were engaged in all this crazy kind of behavior. So the final straw for me was that night when Nimmer was bothering the girl and told the guy to kill himself and live stream it. That's when I was done with the unbearables. I had said in the group chat that they were all in, this is fucked up. I can't believe that nobody is, standing up against this and saying, you're going a little too far here. And then I was out. That's when I had left the unbearables. And then in short order, people like Johnny Arcade and the rest of the DZ had left as well and formed what was called the DZ. It had started to form before that, but
you are missing one critical.
I'm sure I probably am missing more than one.
so right before the fallout, so Nimmer at this point had kind of been a dick to all of us, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, pretty clearly.
Oh yeah, because nobody could be better, funnier than him, which obviously I didn't like either.
And so I mean, this is documented. This is out there. So I don't think we're not saying anything that isn't public record. But so Chuck and I and the rest of the guys, we knew a gentleman by the name of John Neary, who used to do a morning show, and who, it was morning radio, but with a wholesome vibe to it. Like he would,
John's whole thing is,
positivity.
He was like a slightly religious motivational speaker was kind of the nature of his thing. Was kind of like, hey, let's get up in the morning, and I'll read a passage from the Bible and I'll try to get everybody motivated, so it was a wholesome show. And of course he would go goof around and do some like goofy stuff, like the ninja training where he would go to the local park and like go all over the monkey bars and stuff like that, which was very entertaining. But I mean, it was wholesome and relatively clean.
Well, the other thing too is he is an Italian guy from upstate New York, so he would literally do like he wasn't like he wasn't like a complete Guido, but he was another one where it was kind of like, hey, yo, how
he was the kind of guy who could turn it on when he wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He was a wholesome guy, and people also liked him. And Eric Nimmer couldn't stand that. So
yeah, that is very true. He Eric Nimmer targeted everybody who I think he felt was kind of like a threat to him and his popularity. And
but he went
Johnny Arcade was definitely somebody Nimmer was threatened by, but rather than fight him, Nimmer and Johnny were kind of like almost about ready to partner up at one point. So that's the route that almost took. Yeah. Whereas like Neary wasn't he wasn't interested at all in that,
No, Neary and I were thinking about doing a thing together.
I remember that now that you mention
it. So at one point, Nimmer had been talking all this shit on Neary. I can't even remember why, but basically, from what I remember, I can't remember. I can't remember how who came in where, but I remember eventually there it was basically like Nimmer hadn't talking so much shit, and basically Nerai came on like one of our streams.
Yes.
And basically said, I hear that Nimmer's been talking shit
And
on me, so get him in here.
The clip of that incident is in Porcelain's documentary about Owen. And in the shortened clip from that about Nimmer, the clip from that is there. Now, for a little clarification, what had happened is Neri had messaged Nimmer and said, I think that you could be funny, but I think that X, Y, and Z are the reasons why you're failing, and I think ABC is how it could be better. And Nimmer did not like that because he didn't like
criticism.
He didn't like criticism. He didn't like to be. He felt like he was so good, nobody had any right to criticize anything he was doing on stage. That he was like, and he was. When he got introduced to the group, he was the golden child. You were not allowed to mess with him, which is another point I wanted to bring up. Can anybody, I'm sure that those who were there remember this, but those of you who weren't there, can you imagine Owen Benjamin calling you, point at the camera, there it is, calling you a racist because you didn't like Eric Nimmer? Can you imagine Owen seriously calling anybody a racist? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, no,
that man has changed so many times that it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah. And so that was kind of that. So basically, Nim was talking shit on Neri, and then Neri was in one of the DZ streams, and I want to kind of explain how the DZ streams work, because they weren't always about Owen necessarily. Basically, the DZ streams were basically like free-for-alls, basically, where people would go in and just chat and shoot the shit for 8 hours at a time. Yeah. And we did streams every day, and we all had access to the channel too. So for a block of time, if I wasn't busy, I would go on there and stream instead of on my main channel.
In the morning, I was the morning host. I was the guy that would take as soon as I woke up and did everything I needed to do, I was there in the morning to stream. And while the rest of the DZs there when they would stream later on at night, the overnight streams were the most popular. My segment in the morning was probably one of the least popular, but also my segments I used to do in the morning were a completely different animal than what was happening at night.
Yeah.
In my morning streams, it would be me taking care of the kids, jamming on guitar, just trying to entertain people, going through the drive-through and playing pranks at the drive-through. Like, what I was doing was totally different than what everybody else was doing with that channel. I was trying to add a little bit more variety because, you know, I guess I've never been like really considered one of like the cool kids, whereas they all would have considered themselves cool kids. So literally they could draw attention by just being there. For me, for some reason, never had a pull like that. So I always had to bring a little bit of something extra to the table by playing music or building something or playing pranks or just, driving around, doing stuff like that. So that's how I try to keep my end of the thing going.
The reason why I explain that though is because and then on the weekends, we would all kind of just come together and hang out. And the reason I bring that up is because on one of those streams, that was when Neri had been saying, I hear Eric Nimmer's been talking a lot of shit about me. Why doesn't he come in here? We'll send him the invite, and or I think it was actually on Nimmer's channel, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember exactly. I remember from the clip of Neri roasting Nimmer. I'm in the video.
I'm in the video too.
Yeah, a bunch of us, the DZers, the former DZers or current DZers. I don't know if it's even still a thing.
Not really.
But once again, that's out of my element. But point being is that a bunch of us were there when that all went down.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like there was kind of a weird gap in the conversation there.
No, so the reason why I bring up the roast is because basically, and you can see the clip again in Porcelain's documentary, Nimmer goes in and tries to make jokes about Neri, and Neri's just laughing him off. And at one point, Neri says, "You're dying on stage, Nimmer. You're dying on stage." And that was what broke Nimmer, and all of Nimmer's sycophants started calling Neri a racist.
Yep. Now, and then they started calling him when he was at church and stuff like that. And that was the one incident they tried to say he was harassing Doliv Boughton.
Yeah.
Never, ever happened. For those of you who may have heard something about that, what had happened is John Neri was literally walking through the doors into his church on Sunday when he gets a call. And he picked up the phone, and it's Doliv calling from frickin' Israel saying, "What did you do to Nimmer?" And he said, "Look, watch your tone. I'm about to walk into church. I will call you later to talk about this. Not the right time," which I think was perfectly within his rights. But anyway, that blew up into that, oh, Neri's tough talking women. And that was the wagon Nimmer tried to hitch his horse up to, was that Neri was harassing women, which is obviously that didn't even happen. And actually, when Neri did eventually call Doliv, they had a civil conversation about what had happened. And I don't know if they saw eye to eye, but they came to an understanding that whatever you think happened, or that I'm somehow, racist or something like that, it's ridiculous.
Right. But it didn't stop there. And I don't remember the details, but basically from what I remember, it got to the point where they kept calling Neri a racist, and eventually it got to Owen, it got to Owen, and eventually it was pretty much like, okay, well, Owen basically said that, he wanted to keep Nimmer around. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we had basically said, okay, well, we're not really welcome to, and we don't really feel welcome, so we're just going to go off and do our own thing. So we left.
Yeah.
And at that point, there were a lot of people who, and I want to stress this too, weren't involved in the DZ, weren't really involved in anything that we did, but there were a lot of people who liked Neri and who liked us, that didn't like Nimmer, didn't like the hostile atmosphere, and so they just completely left themselves. So 60 people left the Bears, which was a huge chunk at the time, because this was this was all before Owen became a huge cult leader. So we went off and did our own thing for almost a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, for me at least, this is pretty important. I'd always said, listen, I'm leaving the Bears with Chuck and Johnny and everyone else. You guys are more than welcome to, to keep tuning into the Whitfield Report. But I don't care if you listen to Owen. We just, I'm leaving because of disagreements, but you guys are more than welcome to, listen to my show as well. So, at that point, everything was pretty copacetic,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing really happened for, like I said, a whole year, and then the infamous gummy thing happened.
I don't want to dwell on this like way too much. Sorry, my wife had called me, so I'm just texting her. I'm doing an interview, hon. But anyway, so what had happened is, yes, for like almost a year, the DZ and us, we were doing our own things. What had ended up happening is I ended up having a falling out with the DZ. It's not important to hash out the details of why anymore. The whole thing was probably stupid, and I probably blown out of proportion on both ends. But I left the DZ because I did not like something that they did. And during that time, there had been talk about how the DZ was going to bring down Eric Nimmer. They were going to be the ones. They knew that he was lying about his record and everything else like that. So when I had left the DZ, I said, well, screw all those people, not you included at this point, because we were still buddies.
Right.
But I'd said, screw all those people. They're a bunch of, they're all big talk, and they don't actually get anything done. So I went and took it upon myself to go and get the information on Eric Nimmer, and just to wrap all that up, I proved he was in fact lying about his military record.
Okay, quick.
That's all we really need to address. That it's been hashed so many times.
I mean, I guess quick question regarding the DD-214. Why did you decide to? Because I that's a question that I still get, believe it or not, a lot. And I know you've talked about it a little bit, but why did you still feel the need to, I guess, expose Nimmer?
Well, it started off as just that the way he conducted himself, it was hard for me to believe that this man was actually a military member. Now, people have said to me before that you didn't do it because you cared so much about the military. That was part of it. Part of the reason I did it was because I did care about the military. But yeah, the main reason I did it is because Eric Nimmer was a scumbag, and I wanted to prove just how scummy he was, and I was able to do that. I initially, what had initially set me off on the Eric Nimmer hate train was him harassing that girl and him telling my friend to go kill himself. That was the end of it. And also, this guy's big joke was the only reason I joined the military was to make white people thank me for their freedom. So it was like, okay, well, this doesn't sound like somebody who was in the military. So when I filed it, I don't know that much about the military, and I learned a lot from this experience, but I didn't know what I was going to find. But guess what? I found out exactly what we had all suspected, that and it was just suspicion. at that point. I had proven that everything he was saying about his military record was a lie. So then it became, well, this is a big deal because, okay, although him saying those things to that girl and that guy were definitely inappropriate and definitely scummy, out of all of those incidents, well, I mean, I guess you could say that they all carry a lot of weight. I don't want to say which one carries more weight than the other because, you know, it depends on which way you slice it. But basically it was, since it was provable that he was lying about his military record, he deserved to be exposed for that. So that's what I did. And what I had done is I initially, I don't want to go over this again because I'm getting into the details and it's going to take another, I can talk for hours just upon that thing. I think we all know what happened.
I mean, I don't want to, you know, push it too much. Again, I just wanted that specific point as to why you did that. That was one thing.
Maybe after this airs, we can do a follow-up where we answer specific questions if people want to be civil about it.
Oh, yeah. I'm curious as to how this is going to be received from.
I'm sure a lot of people probably do have questions, and if people would please just put their dislike for me aside. I know I can be an abrasive asshole, you know. It's nothing against you. It's it really is.
There are people, and believe me, you're not alone. There are people who I didn't think would hate me that hate my guts, you know, and that's kind of even unrelated to Owen, kind of some of the other people that we've met through this whole you know, ordeal through the internet. But I guess, where do you want to go next?
Well, this is all leading into the next part of the story, but you know what? I really have to use the restroom. So if you give me 1 minute, I will be right back.
And yeah, well, while you're doing that, I'll just fill in people, you know. Folks, you know, the reason why I'm doing this, I know that Chuck's covered some of this on his you know, channel before. I know I've covered it. But you know, it's been a few years since this has happened. And we're a few years moved away from these events, and I do think there's still a lot of BS, a lot of rumors that people have spread about Chuck, about me, about this whole lore. So we are just strictly here basically to I don't know if set the record straight is
clear the air a little bit,
but just clear the air. Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, Chuck, where next?
Okay. So because of this whole going against Owen Benjamin and Eric Nimmer, I received all kinds of threats. It was the kind of thing that was, you know, I'd wake up in the morning and there would be dozens of comments about what a scumbag I am, all because I told the truth and I exposed one of their heroes as being a scumbag. So isn't that funny?
Well,
the dude who's telling the truth is the one who everybody hates.
Well, first off, like, even after I want to clarify this too. Even after the records were out there, even after it was proven, Owen still latched on to Nimmer for a long time and would not believe that the records were real. And it wasn't just Chuck that got threats. I got basically everyone who was associated with our group got threats. And you know, there's a whole thing. I don't want to get into minutia of that, but I mean, basically shit rained down upon all of us for a long time.
Yeah. It was, you know, people saying they were going to report me to the police. They were going to call CPS and get my children taken away from me. They were going to show up to my house. So
They were going to get me expelled from college.
See, now at this point, although I knew that most of them were full of shit, what if one of them wasn't full of shit? What if one of them actually did decide to show up here, and try to do something to me or my family because I told the truth? So I decided maybe it was a good idea, since it's my right as an American citizen. I thought maybe it was time that I go and get myself a gun. I went, did all the background checks, got fingerprinted, the whole 9 yards. In New Jersey, it's very, very, very restrictive and very hard to get a firearm. But considering that I had literally never, ever been in trouble for anything before in my life, my record was squeaky clean. I had never, ever done anything remotely, as far as legally. Yeah, I got into fights in high school, but I mean, that's kind of normal for a lot of boys to get in fights in high school and stuff like that. So, I was never a criminal,
Right.
So I was able to get a gun. I bought an AR-15, or it was a Ruger AR-556 is what it was called, but it was basically, an AR-15, or it got pretty decent with it. Took it to the range a couple times. In general, I just enjoyed it. I was never like a real big gun nut or anything like that, but literally part of the reason I went and did this is because I figured, well, not even just these people like the unbearables and stuff, but what happens if anybody decides to show up to the house someday?
Sure.
And also, people would hunt on my property when they're not supposed to. So I don't like the idea of going out in the woods and there could be somebody up in the trees with a gun and I'm completely unarmed. I didn't like the feeling of that either. That's probably an invalid concern, but I'm just telling you where my head was at the time. I guess paranoia was maybe running a little rampant, but things had really pretty much started to calm down. I had kind of started to, I was doing a lot of parodies at the time and stuff like that. And that was kind of my bread and butter for my YouTube channel for a long time, was these parodies, mainly making fun of Owen, but generally making fun of things that were happening in politics for a while. And this is basically leading into the story of the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. So, so here it goes. What had ended up happening is I had a sister who lived in California, and she had called us one day saying a bunch of crazy stuff, that her husband was abusive and she needed to get out of the house. So me trying to be a good brother, I packed a bag. That day we tried to say, hey, can it wait like a week? Because it really wasn't a good time for us financially. We said, could it wait like a week? And she said, no, you need to come like now. So I dropped everything that I was doing, packed a bag, gathered up, a couple $1,000s that I had, which was going to pay for plane tickets and gasoline to drive back and food and hotels and stuff. And I flew out there and I picked her up and her kids and I drove all the way back here to New Jersey. Just to spare you some of the details, basically what ended up happening is my brother-in-law was not abusive. What had really been going on is my little sister was a severe alcoholic and nobody had told us. And it wasn't until she was under my roof, under my care and my supervision, as well as during that time, she was passed out drunk all the time, which, I didn't know that this is what was going on, but I was basically left to watch her kids for her.
Yeah, on top of your kids too, which
Yeah,
I'm
so like those
sure.
videos of like on my channel of me like baby guitar where I'm pretending the kids are a guitar and like tickling their bellies to the trooper. Those kids in the video, those are my kids and my sister's kids. So I was watching them for a while and I was glad to do it. But it became apparent that I tried to get my sister off the drink myself. She wasn't able to do it. So what we did is we checked her into a rehab, which at the time we thought was the best thing to do. So when she was in rehab, she met a guy in rehab, a former heroin addict,
Oh
who
boy.
also had a checkered past, I guess, to say the least. So anyway, we didn't know about this guy at first. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. So take that out of your head for a minute. All right. So she's in rehab. She's been there for maybe like a week or something like that. She calls me and she says, I really miss my kids. Because when you're in rehab, at least the rehab she was at, it's like, it's pretty much, it's a step above being in jail. I mean, literally, you can't really have like visitors or anything like that. It's really, really, really restrictive. Anything you want to bring in, clothes, food, toothbrushes, they go through everything to make sure there's no like drugs or anything hidden in there. So, she was in there and she said, I can't take it anymore. I got to see my kids. Um, if I could just see my kids again, I know that there's no way I'm ever going to want to drink again. So once again, me trying to be a good brother, took it as she was telling me the truth, and I went and I signed her out of rehab. So for the first couple of days she was out, things seemed great. You know what I mean? She seemed to return to like for lack of a better term, a regular person. And in the meantime, my brother-in-law had come out from California to spend time with us and to spend time with his kids while we were figuring out what exactly we were going to do. So what had happened is, like I said, the first couple of days she was home, everything seemed fine, seemed like things were going to get better. And then, I had suspected that maybe she was drinking a little bit here and there, but I couldn't really prove it because she wasn't like obviously passed out drunk.
How long, if I may ask, how long had she been in rehab at this point?
She had been in rehab for about a week or two when I signed her out. So not nearly long enough.
Had they advised? I mean, I don't know anything about like rehab
To tell you the truth, neither
programs.
do I
So
really. I'm sure that when I signed her out, they probably asked me, "Are you sure?" And they asked her, "Are you sure?" And of course, we both said yes. Like once again, maybe partially my fault for being naive, or maybe it's her fault for being a really good manipulator. I don't know.
probably the latter.
Yeah,
I
probably.
and I don't mean that to be.
Alcoholics tend to be.
Yeah, I don't mean that to be I don't mean that to be, a dick or anything,
No,
but
no,
I
not at all.
mean, as most people know, I mean, my uncle was an alcoholic too, and he was a high functioning alcoholic, but nevertheless, and I
Yeah.
mean, we loved him, but even so, he could be manipulative too
Yeah.
at times.
And
So
me, everybody knows I like to have a couple beers here and there. I've cut down a lot lately. I was up to 245. I'm down to like 215 now, mainly just
yeah,
from diet, exercise, and not drinking as much beer because basically I want to make sure I'm here as long as possible for my children. So
yeah. Well, I like beer. That was your catchphrase for a
yeah,
while.
for a while it was. But anyway, so we got her out of rehab and things looked like they were going to be better, and I can't remember exactly what started happening first, but I would say when things really started to fall apart is, sometimes I have trouble sleeping. And I was up this particular night and I heard the car start up. My car start up. I saw my car pull out of the driveway. Very
Oh
odd.
boy.
Who's driving my car in the middle of the night? Well, it turns out that my sister stole the keys to my car. And she was going out in the middle of the night to meet this guy that she had met in rehab. So I didn't say anything. I didn't wake anybody up because I didn't want to cause a giant scene in the middle of the night, but I literally waited up like a sick, worried, concerned parent all night until she finally came home around 2, 3 in the morning. And when she came home, what I said to her is I said, do you want to explain yourself or do you want me to just start telling you what I think is going on? And she said, I'll explain myself. Oh, in rehab, they tell us that we have to be selfish and we have to do these things that make us happy. And right now this guy is making me happy. And obviously, that wasn't going to fly with me. You know what I mean?
And
you have kids here. Your husband is here. You're sneaking out of the window in the middle of the night, the window of my house. You're sneaking out the window, stealing the keys to my car to go out and meet some heroin addict. This is not going to fly. So what had happened is during one of these times when she was sneaking out to meet this guy, and of course my brother-in-law found out about this and we all wanted to twist this guy's head off in Minecraft. If we ever got a chance to get our hands on him. But so what had happened is one of these times when she was out for a long period of time, we told my brother-in-law, take the kids back home to California where they belong, put them back in school, and you do what you have to do that's best for your children. And we'll deal with Nicole. So eventually she came back, saw that the van was gone and that the kids were gone, and she flipped completely out. Oh, well, how could you do this to me? I just want to see my kids. And we had to say, you've been passed out. Since you've been here, you've been mostly either out in the car, passed out drunk, or we didn't know where you were. Those were the 3 options the entire time you've been here. So don't tell me now you care so much about your kids and you just want to see your kids. You had plenty of time to put your kids first and you didn't. So we had to make a decision what was best for your kids, and staying here with the way you're acting is not what's best for your children. So this is when the cracks really started to form. She became very violent. She had threatened my wife at one point. So it became where she was not allowed here on the homestead until she got her shit straight. So for a while we lost track of her. But then we started noticing, like, that there's 2 houses on the property. We started noticing that, hey, because my dad was working a lot at the time. Why are my dad just went out and bought a couple pounds of cold cuts yesterday. Where did they all go? They're all gone. I didn't eat them. Did you eat them? Did you eat them? No. What's happening to all this food? So apparently what had happened is she was sneaking into the house here and stealing my dad's food out of his fridge.
So hold up. So at this point, you basically kick her out,
mm-hmm.
and she goes off on her own. You don't know where she's staying at this point.
I don't know where she's staying. In the meantime, though,
she's sneaking in.
Yeah, basically. She is sneaking in. Obviously, she must have been like a ninja with this because I'm here all the time. In the meantime, though, she and this guy, her boyfriend or whatever you want to call him, had gotten busted for breaking and entering into a kindergarten after hours, possession. The guy got busted for assault on a police officer.
Oh, geez.
So this is what had happened after we had kicked her out and said, get your shit straight. if you're willing to get your shit straight, you're always welcome back here. But as long as you want to behave like this, you're not welcome in this house.
And real quick, had like law enforcement contacted you about any of this?
Yes, they had
shit?
showed up. They had showed how I found out about this is because they had showed up here looking for them. And when they came here, they thought that I was the guy, because how were they going to know? You know, they just know a name. And I was like, nope, that's not me. You know, here's my license. If I ever see these people, I will be sure to call you. And that's kind of where we left it. But yeah, they had been, you know, they had been on the radar of the police. So they had been by here.
Mm-hmm.
And something to notice, to note about me and my family is this is the kind of stuff we never, ever would have imagined we'd be part of. We didn't want part in any of this white trash kind of bullshit. You know, my whole life, you know, we had been preached against all, you know, we'd always been told to, you know, keep as far away from this kind of life and this kind of a world. And here she was dragging this into my life.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal. I don't know anything about the guy other than he's a heroin addict who has a violent past and assaulted a police officer. She was trying to insist that if we were good Christians, we would let them into our home and let them sleep here. Which,
oh yeah, that tired old excuse.
Yeah, which obviously, you know, I would have to be just as mentally sick as they are to even consider that. You know, so obviously it goes without saying, we said no. Had not heard from them in a while. So the day came of the worst day of my life. I just put the kids down to sleep. This is when they were younger. So they used to take midday naps. I just put them down to sleep. I went out back. Like I said, I've got some property here. I went out back in back of my garages to go fire off a few rounds at some old furniture and stuff that I had in a junk pile in back of my garage. And decided to come afterwards, walked up, poked my head in on the kids. They were still sleeping, walked over into my dad's house. And to tell you the 100% truth, I came in here because that's where I keep my bong. So I came in here to smoke some weed. And while I was in here, I look over and I notice the front door is open. Very unusual because we always use the back door. The front door never, ever gets used in this house and hasn't for a long time. So I went and I closed the door, and then I heard noise upstairs. So I very quietly went up the stairs with my gun, like you see people do in the movies, you know. Opened up the door to my father's bedroom, and there they were with items of clothing removed in my father's bed. So you can imagine I did not take that very well.
Oh, no, not at all.
I freaked out, and I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, because I don't know if I've ever told anybody exactly what happened, because I kind of wanted to wait until this was all over before I kind of put it out there. I've done my probation and everything, and this is all a nightmare for me. I had pointed the gun at him and told him to get the fuck out of my house. My sister decided it was a good idea to step in between the guy and the gun, at which point I had put down the gun and told her, you know, what do you want? One bullet for both of you? Get the fuck out of here. You know, it's my sister. I don't want to hurt my sister. I just don't want this scumbag in my house who was under explicit instruction. My sister was under explicit instructions. You never, ever bring this guy over to my house. We don't need these kind of problems in our life. So anyway, after a lot of shouting and screaming, finally got the guy downstairs out the front door. And the guy said something to me like, "Oh, yeah, that gun make you feel like a big man. I bet that's not even a real gun. I ought to take that away from you and stick it up your ass." So when he said that, bam, I fired a round into the ground and they took off running, right? I never fired the gun in their direction. It was they were standing this way. I fired the gun this way. So was never ever fired the gun at them. They left. I locked up the doors, went back into my house, and I kind of thought that was going to be the end of it. But what had happened is I was looking out my kitchen window and I saw them come around the side of my dad's house and literally take my 2 cruiser bicycles and start to walk away with them. So even after this, they came back to steal from me more. That's when I called the cops, which I should not have done because I kind of royally fucked myself by doing that. The cops came here. They both, my sister and this guy, said that I threatened to murder them. All this other crazy stuff. The cops came with, SWAT teams, they all had assault rifles. I saw that they were in the driveway. I didn't know what was going on. So I opened up the front door. I had my son in my arms. As soon as I opened up the door, the cops were all pointing their rifles at me, telling me to put the kid down. And so I did, walk back, hands above your head, higher so we can see your belt line, because they wanted to make sure I don't have any weapons tucked into my belt line. Walk backwards towards my voice. And then all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm getting hog-tied and thrown into the back of a car.
And you, at this point, I imagine you're kind of like, what the fuck? Like, you
yeah,
didn't
I'm
even know
thinking,
what was going on.
What I'm thinking in my head, they must think that I'm this other guy or something like that. Because at this point, I don't know where they are. I no longer see those 2. So I'm thinking maybe they think I'm this guy. I don't know what's going on. But no, I find out later it's because they told the cops that I threatened to murder them. Which is not really accurate of what happened. They were trespassing somewhere they shouldn't have. Nobody got injured, which was, my intention was never to injure anybody. I just didn't want these people in my house. And if it had come to that level, if that guy had tried to assault me, I probably would have shot him dead. I probably would have. But it didn't come to that because when it came into it, I didn't want to kill anybody. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I just wanted my life to return to normal.
Yeah. I hate to say it almost, and I want to make clear, I'm not saying that this is what should have happened, but what I am going to say is if the guy had attacked you and you had to defend yourself and shoot him,
that probably would have been better for me.
Yeah. In a weird way, it would have been better for you.
No, it definitely would have been, and I was told that by the state troopers and everybody. But anyway, so they kept me in the back. This has happened in August, so I was kept in the back of a cop car in this hot weather for hours while they questioned everybody. They took me initially to the state trooper barracks where they locked me up. And since it was the weekend, there was basically no way to figure out what to do with me at the point. So at literally midnight, I was locked in a jail cell at the Monmouth County Correctional Facility. My first time ever being arrested, being in jail, anything. I spent a week in there in 22-hour lockup, and I cannot tell you how awful it is to be in jail. If you've never been, I recommend doing everything you can to not go to jail. It's really, really, really bad.
Yeah, and you don't have to go into detail about that if you don't want.
I mean, I didn't get like raped or anything like that. Most of the people I was locked up with we're in there for most people who are, see, jail's different than prison. Jail, most people are getting out of there within a reasonable time frame. Most people just want to keep their nose clean and they just want to get out, you know?
Were you like in the drunk tank or something like that? I kind of
Nope.
imagine that that's where they would stick
Oh
you.
no, like when you think of, like, even though it was a jail, think of a prison. That's what it was. You know? Like when you think of like what a prison is like that's where I was. No, I was in
Yeah.
like jail. This room I'm sitting in right now is huge compared to the room that I was locked up in. The cell I was in, you maybe could have fit 4 upright pianos in if you stacked them on top of each other.
Wow.
You know, so not a big room. The food in there is awful. I lost a lot of weight in jail. Also, they never ever turn the lights off, so you can't sleep. You can't sleep right. They come and they bang on your door every hour to make sure that, I guess, you haven't killed yourself or something like that. Like, I don't know why, but so it's really hard to get any sleep. The food is awful. The people are cold. For the first few days, I could not even get a towel to take a shower. And then finally, when you do finally get your towel to go take a shower, it's in the commons area, which I understand they probably do that so the guards can keep their eyes on what's happening in the showers. So that was fine for me. But it's still, being a private person, having to basically strip down naked in front of a bunch of strange dudes to take a shower in jail is obviously a very demeaning thing. And also when they take you into jail, I mean, it's the whole thing. Like, they make you strip down naked in front of them when they bring you into jail.
Sure.
They make you bend over and show them your asshole. I'm not joking. They literally make you bend over and show them your asshole.
Yeah.
So, you know, and can you imagine, you know, me also never having been in a situation like that. And not only that, these guards are making fun of me for the incident of what happened and basically said, you're going to jail for a long time. You're going to go to prison after this. So I'm like devastated. I'm traumatized. This is literally like the worst experience of my life. They only let you out. The only time they let you out is they let you out for breakfast. And then you have a recess in the middle of the day. So you have 2 hours outside of your jail cell. It's very hard to get access to the library, to read, to do any of that stuff. It's hard to get anything in there. So literally, you are locked in a room with nothing but yourself and your cellmate for 22 hours a day. I mean, it's awful. So anyway, I spent a week in jail. They actually had let me out early. I wasn't expecting to be let out until a day or two later, but they came into my the door open and they yelled, "Boris!" So I came out and they were like, "Grab your shit, you're going home." And I was like, "What?" You know, like, thank God, but I was like shocked that, like, thank God I'm getting out now. But anyway, they let me out, but they would not let me make a phone call before I left. So literally, I'm in a town that's like over 10 miles away from where I live, probably more than that. Like, I don't even know how far it is. If I had to walk from their home, it would have taken me like half a day. You know, it would have taken me like 12 hours probably if I had to walk home.
So they just dumped you on like a street corner in
Basically,
this
with a
town, basically.
they dumped me on the street with a bus ticket,
Can
and no buses go to my town.
can I
The
ask
nearest,
a
go ahead.
can I ask a question though too? So you're in prison for a week, and you
Mhm.
had you even gotten like sentenced or anything at this point?
No, for the first few days, I didn't even know why I was locked up. I had no idea what the
That just,
charges were, what was being alleged. I did not know.
I mean, I believe you. It just seems unbelievable that they would allow you to go for that they would allow you to go for a week without
because
an
it
attorney
was,
or anything.
you see, the thing is it was the weekend. So initially they told me I'd probably just be in there until the beginning of the week. And then the beginning of the week, when I guess all the lawyers and the cops and everybody else come in to discuss what happens with whom, they saw a gun involved. Well, in New Jersey, if a gun is involved in any crime, it's an automatic 10 years in prison. So that's what I was facing.
Oh,
And I
geez.
had learned that about halfway through my jail sentence when they, the first public defender, thank God they didn't, they switched me to somebody else because I did not like him. But when the public defender came to talk to me was the first time I knew what I was facing, what charges I was facing, and what kind of time I was facing. And this public defender literally straight up told me, you're probably going to prison for 10 years. You know, and of course, I was devastated. I was very, very upset. Also, another thing they don't tell you about jail is if you're there for a certain amount of time, they make you go to their doctors or nurses, whatever, and they gave me some sort of shot. I don't know what it was for, but literally when I got back to my cell, I fell asleep for probably about the first time I was in jail, and I literally slept for like 12 hours straight. After they gave me that shot, I don't know what was in it or what it was for. I asked if there was a way I could opt out, and they just told me, no, you have to take the shot.
That is, I mean, that is draconian that they did that.
And also, you know, during
Just
visitation,
just out of curiosity, because I have some New Jersey listeners, and you might have seen some of them on Twitter. But is Phil Murphy governor of New Jersey at this point? Is that Weasel?
I believe Murphy is still is governor at this point. There is a bright side to Murphy being governor, which I'll address a little bit later. But so I was in jail about a week through. I knew what I would, about halfway through the week, I knew what I was facing. Eventually I got dumped on the street, and it was so funny because, you know, I was so miserable and so happy to be out of jail. I literally, as I was walking, I had said a prayer that I just wanted to get home. And if God could find a way to get me home, I would literally get down on the ground and kiss my father and my wife's feet when I got home. And just as I was walking down the main street of this town, this lady came out of her house and she was wearing a shirt that said Angel on it. So I asked her if I could borrow her if I could borrow her cell phone. I said, you don't even have to let me hold it, touch it, or anything, but could you please just call my father? Obviously she didn't know I just got out of jail. I wasn't going to mention that because, you know, I just said, you know, could you please just give my father a call and let him know I'm walking down Main Street towards the Freehold Mall. So she said, no problem. She let me use the phone, and, you know, I called my dad, and it just so happened that my aunt had been there that day. So my dad literally jumped in my aunt's car and ran right over to come pick me up. And literally when I got home, I got down on my hands and knees and I kissed my father's feet and my wife's feet. So I was so grateful to be home.
Yeah, man. Jesus. Yeah, you've been through the ringer.
Yeah, but just to sum up, so then after that, it took a year to actually go into court for this. And the first thing I did is we went to a judge to get a waiver for the Graves Act. The Graves Act is the thing in New Jersey that states if a gun is used in a crime, it's an automatic 10-year jail sentence, prison sentence, not jail.
Does that include cases of self-defense? Because I've heard in some cases
if it's
does.
clear, if it's self-defense, it's not a crime.
Okay.
So, obviously they had not seen what had happened with me as self-defense, even though nobody was injured. I didn't shoot anybody. Nobody got shot. But anyway, what they did is the judge had basically said that to prosecute me under the Graves Act would be a serious miscarriage of justice. So I was lucky as far as that goes. So the automatic 10-year prison sentence was off the table. Basically, the deal I had made was they had me on 3 felony charges. I think it was assault with a deadly weapon, illegal discharge of a firearm, and felony assault. Basically, the deal I had made is that if I wanted to go to trial, they would have tried to prosecute me on all 3 felony charges, and they would have brought state troopers and all these people that were involved to basically get in there and say, I'm a liar, I'm a scumbag, I'm the worst guy in the world, I deserve to go to prison. And in that case, I would be facing probably about 10 years on each charge. So about like 30 years in prison.
Jeez.
So obviously I was not liking the sound of that. I tried to do these programs that are supposed to defer any sort of conviction, but which is called PTI. The PTI officer I had talked to said that she thought I was a really good candidate and agreed that I should not be in trouble for what happened. Unfortunately, this lesbian prosecutor who was in charge of prosecuting me, a literally blue-haired dyke, said that, no, I'm a violent individual. I really should be spending 10 years at least in prison for what I did. So basically what ended up happening is to stay out of jail, I pled guilty to the 1 felony assault charge and went on probation for 1 year. So it literally, after the arrest date, it took me 2 years to be done with this. It took me 1 year after the incident to find out I was going to go on probation for a year. And then I did the year of probation, and now I'm free.
Okay. So I want to interject here real quick, just to let the audience know, because
this is probably the first time I'm ever telling you the full story. I think I had told you the nuts and bolts of some of it, but not like not the nuts and bolts and all the finer details.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing this. This is the first time I'm hearing the story. The thing I want to clarify, and I know that I clarified this for you over the phone when we first reconnected at the end of last year. But for the audience, because there were a lot of people when you got arrested who, asked me to comment on what happened. And what had happened from my end was someone had told me that you were in jail, and I'm not going to mention who it was because they want to remain anonymous. But it was someone we both know, and I was told that you were most likely going to face 10 years in prison, and because of the whole because of part of this drama with Owen's group and this other group that we've also had kind of dealings with, I was kind of advised that it would kind of be in my best interest to kind of break contact with you, just because it would avoid.
Yeah, I understand the thinking of that, but
yeah.
Here's what all right, so to back up, so that's what happened from your point of view. Now and this is the part where really this is what Sam and I really wanted to talk about on this episode, but I think it was important to kind of tell the whole backstory and get everything out there. From my point of view, I was arrested. I spent half a week in jail not knowing what was going on. The other half of the week believing that I was probably going to be going to prison for a long time. I was so grateful to be home. I don't have that many in real life friends. So one of the first things I did was logged into Discord to talk to you and some of the other people who I thought were my friends, only to find out that I had been kicked out of every single one of their circles. So I didn't even have anybody to talk to about what had happened. And not one of you had asked me what happened. So obviously I was I was extremely upset about that. And
which, to be fair,
I don't think I was as mad at you because I kind of understand the way that the rest of the group can be. And I figured they were probably putting, what I thought at the time was that they had probably put pressure on you to distance. I was more hurt by the fact that I felt like you abandoned me, where the rest of them was like, well, I've had problems on and off with those people throughout the years. So I was upset, but I think I was the most upset when I felt like you weren't there for me.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, knowing what I know now, and like I said, Chuck and I discussed this in private. Had I known the full story of what was going on, I probably would have been, more sympathetic to,
Well, and the other thing is they were out telling people some crazy story that from what I understood, the rumor they were spreading is that I got arrested because I chased down my brother-in-law with a gun in a parking lot. I don't know where they got that story from or who concocted that, but that is complete bullshit and a figment of somebody's imagination because nothing like that ever happened.
The story that I had heard, and again, I don't, I think it was probably someone heard this, that, it was basically like telephone.
Yeah.
But what I had heard is that the guy had come at you, and then I guess you're basically I heard was that you got into it, was that I heard that you were talking shit about your sister, and your brother-in-law, I guess, came at you, and you, I guess, pointed a gun at him. That was what I had heard. It was really
point being, it wasn't reflective of reality, which is also why I was so upset when people refused to talk to me and citing that as a reason, because it was like, that's not even what happened. You guys didn't even bother to ask me what had happened. I just got back from the worst experience of my life to find that literally all you guys were like, fuck you, Chuck. I was like, what? I need more than anything at that point. I felt like I needed support, and I felt like everybody had just abandoned me. Besides, obviously the most important is my wife and my father, and my kids are too young to understand at the time, but still at that point in time, you want to feel like people are on your side, especially because I didn't go looking for trouble. It wasn't something I had ever planned on doing. It was trouble had found me, and thank God nobody got hurt. And really, if this had happened in any other state, I probably wouldn't be in trouble. If it had happened anywhere south of Jersey, I wouldn't have even been in trouble, which is also why I was so upset at these people who claim to be on the right wing of things, conservatives, all big Second Amendment people, would then criticize me for doing what I felt like I had to do at the time to defend myself and my home.
Yeah.
And sure, maybe now you can try to claim, well, you really didn't have to defend yourself with the weapon. You can say that now, but you weren't there. The only thing I knew about this guy is that he was guilty of assaulting a police officer and is a former and probably current heroin addict. And also when they had gotten busted, they got busted with also meth. So, what person in the right mind would be cool with that all of a sudden entering into your house unannounced? You would have to be mentally sick to be okay with that. I'm not running a rehab here, some halfway house.
Right.
This is my home where me, my wife, and my children sleep.
Yeah. Why? I mean, I could do a whole podcast about this just in general, and this might be a good one. But why is New Jersey's gun laws so fucked up?
I don't know. And it's also because it's funny because when people think of New Jersey who aren't from New Jersey, they think of it as an extension of New York City. So they think, oh, well, all that crime running around, like the inner city, we don't need guns on the streets there. So we got to make it real hard to like get and really crack down on those gun laws. But people don't understand that, like, there's New York City and then there's Newark in that whole area of New Jersey right next to New York. But after you go south from there, eventually the factories stop. The refineries stop. They call New Jersey the Garden State for a reason. Around me, it is nothing but sod farms, corn farms, horse farms. It's all farms out here. There is no local police station. So once again, another reason why I felt it was necessary for me to arm myself. Because you know what they say, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. Well, where I am, when seconds count, the police are 20 minutes away.
Sure.
So, it's a totally different situation. People don't understand. Really, it should not be under those restrictive rules because, not that I'm justifying crazy gun laws that they have in New York or anything, but I think I'm just trying to play devil's advocate what the mentality might be of these people who are in control of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense in the context of where I live. In the context of where I live, it makes absolutely no sense why people shouldn't be allowed to have guns. Oh, because in New Jersey, you do not have, and this is why I was in trouble. In New Jersey, there is no stand your ground law. You do not have a right to defend yourself in New Jersey. You only have a right to retreat. Which is just to play devil's advocate, I can understand where you're going with that. However, it's a flawed idea because, number one, in my context, where am I going to retreat to? This is my house. I wasn't out somewhere else with a gun, acting crazy.
Which, by the way, I suppose I should clarify that, like, that was kind of like another thing that got, thrown into the story that I heard, that, like, you weren't actually at your home, that, like...
No, yeah, I was in my home.
Yeah.
This is my home.
Yeah, so
once again, if you are any sort of a believer in the Second Amendment, you really should have no problem with what I did. But I'll tell you why I regret what I did. I regret what I did because it caused probably most likely an irreparable rift between me and my sister, and we'll probably never ever be on speaking terms again because of this. So what I lament is the loss of my sister, not the fact that I felt I had to defend myself against some scumbag drug addict in my home. I could give a shit less about that guy. And and I do not feel bad at all saying this. If that guy doesn't find Jesus, I literally hope that he dies in the street. I hope every bad fucking thing that could ever happen happens to this guy, because not only did he ruin my life, he ruined my sister's life. So I wish nothing but, fuck you very much to that guy. I wish nothing good upon that guy. I hope that someday he finds Jesus, I guess, and saves himself from hell, but that's about the most I can ever wish on the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as far as you and your sister go, I mean, look, I don't think any of this is your fault. I mean, you put up with a lot.
Well, I was just trying to do the right thing, and a lot of times what a lot of people know is that sometimes the right thing is not a black or white issue. A lot of times it's kind of gray.
Oh, of course.
So once again, I really don't have any regrets about what I did. The only thing I regret is the way it damaged my reputation and the loss of my sister, because now I am a convicted felon. Mind you, a convicted felon who's been convicted of a violent felony assault, even though nobody laid hands on one another and nobody ever got hurt. What is it going to look like when somebody sees I'm a violent convicted felon? You know what I mean? So literally this I wouldn't say it's ruined my life, because right now I'm a stay-at-home dad, so I really don't feel the effects of it very much. The part that mainly ruined my life was going to jail and stuff, and thank God that's all over. But
I know some Second Amendment rights people that might like to talk to you after this.
Yeah, I would love to. At the time, when I told my story to other people, they had said I should have gotten some attorney that was a champion of Second Amendment rights. But here's the thing: if I let this go to trial, they would have tried to convict me on 3 felony charges.
Yeah.
So at the time I was scared shitless. I just wanted to get home. And also I would have been in jail for God knows how much longer until they sorted this shit out,
Well, ironically, if you had been in jail, if you had been in jail when COVID had happened, they might have let you go, since they basically let all the. Anyway, that's a whole nother.
The other thing I wanted to say, because you mentioned Murphy, one of my big problems was that I wasn't going to be able to vote anymore because I'm a felon. However, in New Jersey, Murphy lifted that so felons can vote. So I am still able to vote. The one good thing that he did, because that's the thing, you have to understand, being in jail too also opened my eyes to the nature of jail and why people are there. Not everybody there in jail, regardless whether there's somebody like me convicted of a felony or somebody in there for drunk driving. Most people who are in there over some bullshit. They shouldn't even be locked up at all. It's a very heavy-handed, overzealous way to treat people. To lock them in a cell for a week for 22 hours and feed them dog food 3 times a day. It's awful. It's cruel and unusual. It's cruel and unusual punishment. You know who deserves that? Rapists, murderers, people like that. Not somebody who is just trying to defend their home, and mind you, nobody got hurt. You know what I mean? Nobody got injured. So what assault happened? Nobody laid hands on one another.
Yeah, well, I mean, so since you and I have, even kind of before you and I reconnected, I wouldn't say I'm a libertarian full on, because I think the Libertarian Party is kind of disorganized. And
what I had said to you one time about the libertarians is nobody's ever liberty enough for them.
Right.
There's all these smaller factions within it, and all of them think that they're more liberty than the other,
Well, But I will say this, one thing that I think they one thing that I think they have been good on it, and one thing that I definitely agree with them on, is the fact that the prison system in this country sucks balls, and
Oh,
we need reformation.
do you know this? Do you know that they charge you every day you're in jail?
Yeah, I actually.
Yep. I think it was $15 a day. And it's funny because when you're in jail and you're locked up with one dude, you better try to get along with that dude, and to at least keep yourself sane. It's funny because when I had learned that, I turned to my cellmate, who I still talk to every once in a while. He's out now too. He was in there over some BS too, but that's not my job to tell his story. But it's funny because I turned to him and I said, "Man, this is the shittiest hotel I ever been in." And he thought that was so funny. He just, because when you're locked up in jail, you know what I mean? You need every bit of levity that you
Sure.
can get.
Yeah, and again, I know people are going to say grifter, fanboy, whatever, but I mean, hearing your experience, and then also listening to Joey Diaz's podcast and all of his stories of prison, where he's an actual like hardened felon.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy what some of the stories he's told
Mm-hmm.
about prison.
Yeah. Thank God I never saw prison, but yeah, jail is bad enough. I can
Yeah.
only imagine prison is worse. Oh, and here's the other thing. While I was in jail, my sister had come by here to make some demands, which of course were not met. But in that time, she had attempted to attack my wife, kicked the bumper off of my wife's car, and also told my father that she hoped while I was in jail that I got raped by a big black N-word.
Oh, Jesus.
So, you know what I mean? The fact that this is, like, when I say this is one of the worst experiences of my life, I mean it. It really was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I just hope that someday, pray for my family, that's all I could say. Pray for my family, this is some real white trash bullshit that I never ever thought, I would be involved in. It's not the way that we were raised. My grandmother and my grandfather would be turning over in their graves, so what can I say? You know what I mean? Life's fucked up.
So I mean, I guess, I mean, you've kind of been laying low for a bit. I know that you're on Discord. I technically am not, but my alter ego is wink wink, and my alter ego talks to you on there frequently. But I know that you've been planning on doing some, I guess. Well, I don't even want to preface it that way. Basically, what I want to ask is, what's next for Shark Boris? Basically.
Well, basically, as I had said before, my bread and butter for a long time was the parody songs and stuff like that. And I kind of transitioned away from mainly the parodies, and I started doing a comedy variety sketch show called We Interrupt This Broadcast, which was, besides a few things, pretty much entirely written, directed, acted, recorded, filmed, did all by me. So it was a major undertaking, and it was fun to do, but it was also a lot of work for the amount of views I was getting. So when it comes to that world, what I'm doing right now is I'm taking some of the better bits from the old stuff, plus I'm writing new stuff, because I'm going to make the We Interrupt This Broadcast movie, which should have a lot of, you'll see some familiar faces, some old material, some new material, but you'll see some familiar faces and characters. I'm not going to include the parody songs in it because I want to make a movie that I can genuinely call mine and not have borrowed anybody else's material. Any music involved is going to be 100% my music. So it's going to be, that's my plan for that. And I'll let that sit for a while. But basically, I'm transitioning back to what I initially started my YouTube to do, which is to be just a regular musician. And people are very opinionated on me as a musician. In general, people think I'm a better guitarist than a singer, which is definitely true. I'm definitely a much better guitarist than I am a singer. As far as my voice goes, what I always say is, hey, for me, it's good enough for rock and roll. I'm never going to be one of those American Idol type singers. It's not me, and it won't be me.
I mean, those American Idol people, they have no talent anyway. I mean,
well, they
built.
have nice voices. You know what I mean? That's about it. They don't write their own music or anything. They sing other
Yeah.
people's songs, but their voice is slightly better. You know, because for me, what I always bring up is like when people say stuff about my voice. Oh yeah, well, how's Bob Dylan's voice? How's Neil Young's voice? How's Mick Jagger's voice? None of them really have that good of voices, but they're okay singers. They do what they do well. It's
Yeah.
their style. It's only recently that everybody has to be like this pretty boy with the golden voice. For me, there's more going on to me than my singing. You know what I mean? So when people focus on my singing, it's like, did you not pay attention to the full band recording that you just heard that I did by myself? Like, that's me playing drums and bass and guitar, and I recorded all this. I did it
Yeah.
all myself. I didn't pay anybody. I didn't go to a recording studio. I built my own recording studio. I did all this myself, I think that's worth at least some sort of credit other than your voice sucks.
Yeah, I don't know if I've actually said this to you, but the one thing I've said to people in your Discord, and even some of the people in your Discord have been like, "What is Sam talking about?" I've always said that you remind me a lot of Stuart Copeland from The Police because he does a lot of. I
I
mean,
kind of, now that I'm looking at my face kind of like the shape kind of looks like his today. I don't know whether it's because
yeah.
I just shaved or what, but like I could see that look in me right now.
Well, he has kind of like a very off-color sense of humor if you've ever listened to any of his like solo stuff, but also I mean he does all of his own instrumentals too most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. And kind of also you're kind of a mix of him and then I guess Zappa
Mm-hmm.
to kind of a certain extent
Yeah.
stylistically. Um
Well, I
but
appreciate that. Those are at least some good references because I've had some pretty crummy ones.
pretty esoteric, but hey,
Yeah.
I'm into esoteric shit too. So
I'm kind of out there as far as my musical tastes. I really am all over. As far as like my guitar playing, I mean, I'm definitely very heavily influenced by Neil Young, uh, David Gilmour, uh, the greats, the guitar
yeah,
players you would expect, Jimi Hendrix. Not that I'm saying I play guitar anything like those people, and obviously Brian May of Queen, because my main guitar is the Brian May Red Special. So you could see where my influences lie. I don't really play guitar or anything like those people, but I think at times you could definitely hear the influence of those guitarists upon my playing. But basically, that's my focus now. Is I just want to go back to being a guitar player. I just want to make music, and with We Interrupt This Broadcast, hopefully make some people laugh. I got a kick out of doing it. Maybe people don't get my sense of humor, but I enjoyed it. For the few positive reactions I did get when I was doing that show, it meant a lot to me,
yeah. I mean, yeah. I always thought that like we interrupt this broadcast. I mean, I liked it because it was kind of quirky. But again, I mean, I like quirky stuff.
It's it's the thing is that I don't think people understood what it was, you know. um I don't know, I don't think people got what I was going for, or if it came if it came across the way I had intended it to. It's still what I wanted to do. I just don't think that people saw it the same way I did.
So, kind of leading off that, I mean, I suppose, what did you view as? Because I always kind of interpret it as like, okay, this is Chuck's thing, but just like David Lynch, he's leaving it up for the audience to kind of interpret.
To put it, and I hope people aren't offended by this reference, because I'm not trying to like compare myself necessarily to this, but I guess I am comparing because I'm using it as a comparison. But it was kind of my live action version of Robot Chicken, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, actually, okay, yeah, I see
Robot
that.
Chicken. Robot Chicken is a lot more like pop culture references than I was doing, but that kind of quick sketch, where it's like, all right, you just a short sketch, people get the joke, you move on. Like there was the characters like Tailor Made. He's this overzealous preacher. The stand-up comic. He's just a really bad stand-up comic, and all of his jokes sucks and everybody hates him. It was just these like short premises, and things
Still
like
better
that.
than Owen, though.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Definitely. As far as that goes, his stand-up was never really that good. Some of his relationship humor had potential and was okay, but I haven't seen the last few quote unquote stand-up specials that he's done, but from what I've heard, it's not even jokes. It's him just basically like, it's one of his live streams, but he's calling it a special.
In his live streams, I haven't, well, Apex and I watched like the end of one a few weeks ago because he was talking at like the Super Bowl and whatnot. And I mean, listen, Owen's just been weird, and he just keeps getting weirder, and there's nothing to it. And same with, I mean, so this is kind of the other thing I kind of wanted your, and you don't have to comment, but I noticed that like since Owen, the whole internet has kind of gone weird with all of these weird characters that have kind of like, well, I mean, I suppose, I hope you don't mind if I bring this up, but I mean, after Mersh shit talked me, he immediately shit talked you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that was because he somehow thought that like you and I were connected, so he figured if he was going to go after me, he could shit talk you.
Yeah, the other thing is that he tried to say is that, I know you're one of those DZ people. And it's just, if you think that just shows you have not been paying attention to anything going on in my corner of the internet.
No.
So the whole point is that anything Mersh had to say about me was based upon, the only place that reality existed is in his head. I never had a real problem with him. We had kind of grown apart for a while. He was playing my parodies unasked, by the way.
Yeah.
The only time I would ever message Mersh about my parodies is I would tell him, do not play this one on your show because you will get copyright striked. That's the only time I would ever message him about it. I would never say, hey, could you play this on your show for me? He did that all on his own,
Yeah.
That was his own thing. And then I guess when it became inconvenient or less profitable, I don't know exactly what I'm saying, to keep playing my stuff, he stopped, and we went our separate ways until all of a sudden one day he's mentioning my name again. And now once again, I have all the same stuff that happened with the Bears coming into my life over again. And that's what I was also so offended, because the weeks before that, I had made it very clear that I was trying very hard to distance myself from those sorts of things. Other than talking about them in a forum like this, I really don't want to be tied up too much in that world anymore. I want to move on. I don't want to be remembered as the dude on the internet that I don't want to be remembered as the parody guy, the Owen Benjamin parody guy, you know. I'd rather be remembered, hey, that guy that's pretty good at guitar but can't sing that good. I would much rather have people remember that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing though too, and this is kind of the sphere that I've moved into, is you're pretty knowledgeable on the whole comic book, and pop culture thing, especially with anime. So if you were to do commentary, I mean, I could definitely see you maybe doing something like Gare from Nerdrotic does, or something like that. So,
well, I like being a guest. I like being a guest on other people's shows. For me and my personal YouTube channel, I just want to make produced videos, whether it be
yeah,
music. I mean, I know some of my stuff isn't produced. It's just me like, hey, look what I'm playing on piano today. That kind of stuff is what it is. But for the most part, I don't want to, I'm more than happy to guest on anybody's show who is willing to listen to me talk. But I just don't want to do it on my own channel. I like being a guest. For me, that feels more free for me to be a guest on people's shows.
sure, yeah, and I get that. I think. I mean, I think you are. I think you are. You've always been a good guest, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Sam.
I think, and I know I mentioned this too. I just think it's weird how much the internet has changed, really, even in the short time we've known each other. Which,
Yeah,
I mean, isn't too short. It's been 5 years, but still, I mean, we went from people can disagree with each other and be civil to now people think that
no
you know
discussion.
there's no discussion, and now people in Canada are getting arrested, and you think you had it bad. The poor Canadians are
Yeah, yeah, I know.
they're
There's
they're really in.
a lot of crazy things happening now. It's funny because from my point of view, I went from being a guy that used to do covers of songs like Sister Golden Hair on guitar to all of a sudden being wrapped up in this world of these like internet blood sports, which is just, it's never really where I thought my YouTube trajectory was going to go.
Yeah,
And
no,
then
no,
after,
me either.
yeah, and then after it ended up there and I kind of looked around, here's basically one of the reasons too why I stopped talking about this kind of stuff too much, because one day trying to describe these sorts of things and explain to my father who these people are, like Owen Benjamin and Murish, try explaining it without sounding like a complete fucking retard. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like you can't do it, because when it comes down to, these are not people any of us should really care about. If
right.
they're an asshole, the best thing to do is to distance yourself from them. And then guess what? They ain't your problem anymore. And it's funny because, and I completely agree with that sentiment, but that was the point I was trying to make to my father, is I did that. I was right in the process of distancing myself from that, when all of a sudden now I'm getting these people coming in like Marsh after the fact saying XYZ and trying to drag me back into their world. And it's like, no, I don't want to have any part of this. You go do you. Leave my name out of your mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, get my name out of your mouth, because I don't want to be part in anything that you're involved in. I'd be happy not to mention you ever again if you would be happy not to mention me ever again.
Well, I mean, that is kind of the whole other thing too, right? Because I
I
never
will
really
say
had.
this. I will say this. I am a million times more handsome than Mersh. Mersh could never, ever hope to be as handsome as my left nut. Okay?
Well,
That's what I have to say about that, and I'll leave that as that.
you
I'm
know,
talking to you, man. Not you, Sam. Talking to you out there.
also though, he I remember the one thing that he gave you so much shit for was Chuck had 2 GoFundMes. Anyone who has 2 GoFundMes in less than a course of a year, they should they should have their kids taken away.
Yeah,
Away.
which is so ridiculous. Okay, so for those of you who may have heard that, this is what happened. I was in a car accident, which is something I forgot to mention with the whole Eric Nimmer saga. During that period, the accident had nothing to do with Eric Nimmer. It was just during that time period. I got in a car accident. So my car was totaled. I broke my hip, and my wife had a sprained wrist.
Ooh.
So a friend of mine, not upon my request, made a GoFundMe to help crowdfund to help me buy a new car and for any medical bills that may come up. So, that was in a time when I was in need, and I wasn't going to reject charity. I appreciated it. It turns out that I think that time I got maybe like $300, so it wasn't enough to buy me a car, but it did help out a little bit. I wasn't able to walk. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Sure.
$300 helped, at the time. And then the second time was the arrest incident. Once again, while I was in jail, somebody made a GoFundMe. So yeah, I was there in jail, and my first priority was to run over to the phone and say, hey, you got to go make a GoFundMe for this. Believe me, that was the last thing on my mind. The last thing on my mind was getting the fuck out of jail. But once again, it was another time that was a terrible time in my life, and somebody wanted to show me some charity. I wasn't going to reject that. And once again, that was like another $300. So when he's talking about, 2 GoFundMes, that's, you're talking about like $600 total that was given to me.
Yeah,
It's not like people gave me like 20 grand and like I blew it on something stupid, or I was never injured to begin with. No, shit happened and people wanted to help me out. I mean, God bless them,
Well, you didn't run your car into a wall and then like threaten to commit suicide if no one donated to you.
Or like, what's that Eric Andre thing where he shoots the guy? Why did you do this? You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was like, oh, look, I set my car on fire. I guess you're going to have to go make me a GoFundMe now so I could buy a new car.
Yeah, that was the whole thing too, was when people were saying, people. So I realize now that you mentioned Eric Andre, that was basically the story that people have told me about your gun incident. People basically told me that you pulled an Eric on Andre, and now in hindsight, I know that that's not true. Obviously,
yeah, it's not even remotely accurate.
Well, cool. Anything else that
I think that's probably a bit for now. We've been going for almost 2.5 hours. I think that maybe when we release this, we should let it stew for a little bit. And then if people are interested, you let us know in the comments, I guess, if you want to see a follow-up, or you can ask questions to the both of us. I'm all for that. If Sam will be gracious enough to host me again.
Anytime, Chuck. So, I'm glad we got this out in the open. I think it's been a long time. It's been a long time coming.
It's something I wanted to do for a long time, but I wanted to wait until my legal troubles were basically over.
Yeah, and I wanted to wait till some of the internet drama settled down, which it has. So, but anyway, where can people find you if they want to support your work? I know you're
I'm
not doing much right now, but
yeah, right now I'm kind of taking a break because my health hasn't been the best, which is maybe a thing for another time. But on YouTube, you can find me. The YouTube address is YouTube/LCMTV Breath 4. That's locomotive with the vowels taken out, Breath
yeah.
4. Or you can just type in Chuck Boris on the search bar on YouTube and you should be able to find my channel. I'm also on Rumble. But other than that, that's really all I'm doing right now. I've been kind of just trying to get my health in order and take care of my family as best as I can for right now. And then I want to, once my health gets back running, want to start recording again. I want to finish up We Interrupt This Broadcast movie, which I'm really looking forward to doing. And I hope people are as excited about that as I am to make it and release it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll have all that linked down in the description of both YouTube and on Spotify and all the other podcast players as well. So you'll be able to find Chuck, and then yeah, if that's all you have to announce,
And make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Sam. Like his video. I guess the like button would be on this side. I was going to point, but I guess it would be on the other side of the screen from where I am.
Yeah,
Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Let Sam know that you support. Let Sam know that you support him.
If you're on Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating, and also on Apple Podcasts. So I really appreciate you for coming on, Chuck. And
no, I appreciate you letting me come on here and kind of tell the long and short of everything.
I'm glad we patched things up, and I like I said, we're pre-recording this, so I don't know what the reaction is. I'm sure both of us will get some interesting comments, hopefully mostly positive. I'm sure there will be
I hope
some.
So.
I'm sure there will be some negative ones, but real quick regarding all that, I'm not here to say that I'm perfect or that Chuck's perfect or that
neither am I,
or that any of this. I mean, we've both made mistakes, in the past. Yeah, hindsight is 2020. In regards to the whole, thing with Owen and the Bears, I mean, look, there's a bunch of stuff that we probably could have handled differently. For one, I mean, and I've joked about this before, but if it hadn't been for that one Joe Rogan podcast, none of this would have ever happened for me. But, in a weird way, I am kind of glad that it did, because I got to know Chuck, and I got to know a lot of other people who I wouldn't know otherwise, who are good.
At the very least, we got some crazy stories out of it,
Yeah. So anyway, well, Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on, and
thank you, Sam. God bless you, brother.
Feel free to stick around for a bit after I end this. So I have a couple questions, but anyway, folks, thanks for watching and or listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Whitfield Report. Until then, just take care.
Thanks for listening to The Whitfield Report on the NGC Network. Please visit Sam's website at www.thesamwhitfield.com and support Sam on Patreon at patreon.com/Whitfield Report. Until next time, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.
All right. You still there, Chuck?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, we're off now. We're not recording. I wanted to ask you. You said that